Hey folks, Azure Cosmos DB TV. How are you? I'm Mark Brown, your host. I've got with me this week a brand new guest to the show. We haven't had a new guest in a very long time, and also a member of our PM team here for Cosmos. James, how are you today?
Good, Mark. Thanks for having me. Really excited to talk about some cool stuff today.
I'm always excited to talk to you. How about you just kind of, since you're brand new to everyone that watches this show, could you just kind of introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is James. I'm a product manager in Azure Cosmos DB. I work on the NoSQL query engine, as well as a lot of our AI efforts, including our vector search efforts that you may have heard about, and our new Copilot in Azure Cosmos DB, which I'm really excited to share with you today.
You've got a really cool portfolio of stuff. We're going to see one of those things today, but also all the vector search stuff. And you're also the PM for our query engine, query and indexing engine for our Cosmos NoSQL API. I have a feeling you are going to be a very frequent flyer on our show here, James. Just kind of giving you a heads up. Some of our most popular shows are about the query and indexing engine and the improvements. We are constantly adding new stuff, new features, new capabilities, better performance, all kinds of stuff to that. You lead
Yeah.
all of the development of that. And so I would just love to invite you right now to come back on and give us kind of a roundup of some of that cool stuff. How does that sound?
Absolutely. I absolutely accept that. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff that we're working on for both query improvements as well as making it easier for you to make sure that you're optimizing your queries with the right index policies. So we're going to have lots of cool stuff rolling out over the next couple of months. The Copilot that we're going to talk about will help with that query writing, actually.
Oh, that's a great segue. Wow. Dude, you're a pro already here. So let's kind of get into it. So at Ignite last year in November, so just a few months ago, we announced a whole ton of stuff. I mean, we GA'd our MongoDB for vCore and vector search capabilities in there. We announced a whole bunch of other features. And one of those things that we announced is this here, the Microsoft Copilot for Azure and Cosmos DB. And I'm glad you had that on there because I've been butchering the name of this thing since before we ever released it. And now that we have released it, I'm still butchering the name. So thanks for having that written for me in stone there that I could read it from.
Yeah, it's kind of a mouthful, but we wanted to highlight that this Copilot, in Cosmos DB is part of the entire Copilot ecosystem and the one that you may be already familiar with in Azure. So you can expect to see a lot of great integrations coming up in the future.
We are co-piloting everything, Windows and everything in Office and Azure itself. And we've built a really cool Copilot for Cosmos. And I'll let you talk about it because this is exciting. I remember when this idea first came up, and
Hmm.
and we've now brought this thing to market for customers. So take it away. I'd love you to show this thing off.
Yeah. So to start, let me share a quick overview slide, right? So we have Microsoft Copilot for Azure in Cosmos DB. It's in preview today. So this essentially enables you to ask questions in your natural language about your data and have Copilot generate Cosmos DB NoSQL queries for your collections. We're really excited about this. So, like I said, it turns your natural language questions into your Cosmos DB queries. It's powered by state-of-the-art Azure OpenAI large language models. Your data and usage of Copilot is all private and secure within Microsoft's infrastructure, just like your Cosmos DB data. Your data is not used to train any AI models. It's not shared with OpenAI or any third parties. It stays within Microsoft. And of course, it's developed with Microsoft's responsible AI principles. Microsoft, as you know, Mark, has a very strong commitment to developing artificial intelligence technologies, including generative AI, with keeping in mind our responsibility to each other, to our customers, to society, and making sure that we develop these AI models in a very sustainable and responsible way.
Yep, this is great. And just so people understand, people that use Cosmos are learning it for the first time. I mean, it's a database, so there's a query language
Mhm.
on that, and we've adopted a somewhat SQL-like syntax for that. And a lot of people that use it for the first time come at it and they think, okay, great, ANSI SQL language. I'm going to write ANSI SQL at this thing. And then they
Yeah.
realize that that doesn't quite work, especially when they try to use things like join statements and do other types of SQL clauses against data, hierarchical data, by the way, that is stored in documents, not in tables, in containers, not tables, within Cosmos. And I think the genesis for this and the thing we built is really aimed squarely at this brand of user. But I mean, even if you're kind of know how to write queries and are experienced with the product, this is really what we've done is we've provided this Copilot experience to help you write queries for Cosmos DB. And I got to tell you, the work we've done on this thing is absolutely amazing. I can't wait for you to demo this thing. But yeah, just so people understand, if you've ever been frustrated with writing queries in Cosmos, or just kind of scratch your head like, I'm not quite sure how to do that join or how to make that expression or how to make this filter predicate work, this thing is really great.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Mark. So a lot of people have familiarity with various sorts of SQL syntax, right? Cosmos DB is a little bit different. It's a little more nuanced, and that's because, as you're saying, Cosmos DB is a non-relational database, right? So that schemaless interface of storing your data as documents rather than as tables with column stores. It lends itself to operations and database operations that when you fully leverage the index and when you write optimal queries, you can actually get really great performance, really low latency on these, right? But we understand that it's also a bit tricky to learn all the nuances of the Cosmos DB NoSQL language. And so, we've heard that loud and clear from customers and from our own usage as well. And so, we're going to be releasing a suite of tools to help you write queries in a more optimal way, just help you brainstorm what queries you might want to write right off the bat. And Copilot here is one of those steps.
Yep, absolutely.
So yeah, I'm excited too. So I want to get right into the demo.
All right,
So
let's do it, man. Let's do it.
let me shift away here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my Edge browser. Okay, so you can see I have my Cosmos DB test resource and I have the Data Explorer open. I'm going to go ahead and just make a little bit of room here, right? So this is the Data Explorer experience that we all know and love. This is the welcome home screen. And I see something right off the bat. I see this Query Faster with Copilot card. So if I click this card, it will take me to a sample collection that we've actually set up for customers to use to get acclimated with using Copilot. This database and collection contains synthetic data around, say, an e-retailer scenario with fake products and fake reviews of those products and information about those products. It's completely synthetic data. It's not based off of any real data. It's generated using a code script. And this database is maintained and paid for by Microsoft. It's available to you at no extra cost. So if you want to have a data set to experiment with Copilot, you can go ahead and click this card and it'll take you to that data set. Or you can go to whatever database and collection that you already have and get started. And I'm going to do just that. So I have here my Movie Lens data set in my sample database. So Movie Lens is a well-known data set for movies and descriptions of movies and recommendations, etc. So I have a sample of that here. I'm going to go ahead and create a new SQL query. And I see the query editor pop up. And now I also see our Copilot dialog box here up top, right? So I can go ahead and ask Copilot a question in natural language. Now, if I click in, it will show me some suggested prompts here, like show me the first 10 items. So maybe I'll click that one. And what I'll have to do is I'll have to click this generate query button here to ask Copilot to create a query for me. So this is going to send back to our Copilot backend, which is powered by Azure OpenAI, and it will return a query for me. So right off the bat, right, I can see in the query editor a couple of things. I can see a query, and this looks perfect for showing me the first 10 items. I can also see an explanation of the query in natural, easy to understand language. And then I also see, a copy of the prompt that I just entered for reference. I can go ahead and execute the query. And I can see the results down here in the results pane, as I would expect.
This is cool. Does it, like that's a pretty simple, straight one, like just top 10 from something you don't have anything in the projection there necessarily or anything else kind of more complex. Do you have another one that might show kind of something where you're manipulating some of the properties within there, and either in a projection or doing some other stuff?
Yeah, so I can say something like, show me all movies that were shot in France, right? And so we'll generate a query. Cool. So I see a little bit more complex of a query here, right? I can see that it's actually using a subquery, and there's a little information bubble down here that this is just to tell you that you're using a subquery, and just make sure that you're using subqueries in the right way, because maybe they can be expensive, or maybe it could be syntax that we don't quite support yet. But in this case, like, it actually looks good, right? So I'm selecting C for my container where it exists, and I'm selecting some value where my C dot production countries, where a string equals T dot name France true. So I'm doing a match, I'm doing the string match to try to find the word France in the production countries property. Now, you notice I didn't say anything about the property names or anything like that in my collection, right? Copilot inferences this on the back end. And so this looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and execute this. And cool, right? So I can see a bunch of results here. So I was able to get the production countries, and let's see. So I see a couple items here, right? I see this Troy Couleur Rouge as one of the films shot in France, and I can see a list of production companies there and production countries, and I can see France is listed as one, Poland's listed as another. And as I scroll down, I can see additional information about this. And then scrolling down even further, I see there's three colors collection, which is probably like an English translation of the movie that's also listed here. And yeah, scrolling down, I can see all the results here. But these are all the movies in my collection that were shot in France that Copilot is able to find.
Yeah, it's really cool. Have you? This is amazing, really. I mean, just like the ease with which you can just write queries now. I mean, just being able to interact with this thing in a natural language way is just, and have this thing spit out queries that are syntactically correct and perform right. It's just simply mind blowing. I don't know if it's possible to overstate just how cool this is.
Yeah, no, we've had a lot of really great feedback from customers who have been using this, right? We have thousands of users who are using it every single day. And we know that, there are areas where the Copilot really excels, and there's areas where we need to make some improvements, and we're doing that on a continuous basis. So, if I see a query that I really like and I think is awesome, like this one, I can go ahead and give a thumbs up, which gives us information back the product as the product team that we know that there's a set of queries that Copilot's actually doing a good job. But if I think it's not doing a good job, I can give it a thumbs down, in which case, I'll send the prompt that I entered, the query that Copilot generated, and additional responses back to Microsoft. So I can, provide a little bit more information for us to make Copilot even better. And with that, I'll also, of course, say the disclaimer, which is true out of any AI system or generative AI system, that whenever a Gen AI system is creating some content, you should always review it, by ideally a human should review it to make sure that it's accurate and appropriate for use before using. But really, Copilot does save you quite a bit of time when generating these types of queries.
Got it. When you're sending feedback, and one question I think customers or users might have is, hey, what are you sending back? Like, are you sending the document? Are you sending my data? Are you sending anything? Like, what is all the stuff you guys get if I send some feedback saying this query isn't working right?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So at no point in the Copilot pipeline do we see any of the data that you have stored in Cosmos DB. Actually, humans don't even see the schema or the properties that you have for your documents. This stays with the Copilot infrastructure itself. When I do give a thumbs up and additional information, or when I give a thumbs down with additional information, we collect just a handful of attributes about your experience, right? So it's the prompt that gets set. It's the prompt that you enter, rather. It's the query that gets generated. So the query may contain information about, let's say, the properties in your document, like in this case here. And then also any text that you wish to provide to Microsoft as well, in the form of that free text field. And then, the indicator, was it a thumbs up or was it a thumbs down? And that's about it.
Got it. When it's generating that query, part of that pipeline, though, is looking at a document because it needs to know, obviously, what properties to write those, like your subquery on, so that it actually works, right? But that data, you're saying no human ever sees that stuff. That all lives basically temporarily within that pipeline that's generating the query response within there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And even the large language model doesn't actually see any of the data stored in Cosmos DB, just the schema. So we have, this is actually sort of a nice segue. If I go back to the slides here.
Well, you're welcome. You did me a solid on a segue earlier, so I thought I'd do you one back.
Perfect. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what our Copilot pipeline looks like. So this is a large simplification here, but the central piece is this Azure OpenAI service where our large language models live today. But there's a lot of inputs that go in stuff, right? There are system prompts, or sometimes called meta prompts, which are instructions for how the Copilot should behave, what the output should look like, what kind of requests it should respond to, and also, some information about how to utilize Cosmos DB NoSQL syntax correctly. Another piece is few shot examples, right? So this is, pairs of prompts that users may enter and queries that could be generated on a hypothetical data set. And again, when we design these few shot examples, they're based off of some feedback that we get, and they're based off of our own experts. But there's no example here that uses any of data that we've received or any customer data or anything like that. These are all use cases that are based on synthetic data. And then that last piece is schema info, right? So we have an inference engine to try to determine what is the schema across all the documents in Cosmos DB that's stored in your collection. It does an approximate measure today for expediency. But in this part of the schema info, it looks at the document property names and actually obfuscates away all of the property values. So you don't have to worry about your data itself being sent to our Azure OpenAI service. It's really just the schema of the properties or the property names that are sent, and all the values are thrown away.
Got it. Okay. Makes sense. That's good.
Yeah. And then there's a couple other parts of the pipeline as well before we get to the end, which is the Copilot experience. We utilize the Azure OpenAI service content filtering system to make sure that any potentially harmful requests that are sent to Azure OpenAI service, or any potentially inappropriate or responses that are generated that might violate some of our responsible AI principles, like don't make it out of the Copilot. We'll do a regeneration in that case. Then we have a validation stage to make sure what we're generating actually makes sense in order to pass on to the user and to the front end. And then we do many rounds of rigorous testing, which I'll get to in a minute. And this testing is both human testing and automated testing that we have to ensure that Copilot meets a minimum threshold for performance and for safety. And as I mentioned, we're continuously making improvements to this entire pipeline. So, if you've been a Copilot user from the start, from November 15th, when we announced this at at Ignite, you'll notice some improvements along the way in the way that Copilot can perform.
I got a question there. So totally makes sense. We're doing our own testing on this stuff. Is there a way, or I'm guessing we don't test the performance of the queries that this thing generates when a customer runs it in Data Explorer, right? So they would have to actually push the feedback button in there if they wanted to say, "Hey, this thing runs, but it's not performing very well." Is that accurate? We're not gathering any data on that. So okay,
yeah, you're absolutely right. So we'll see, if there's an error in the back end, like if there's a service outage or something like this, or there's some a network request error or something, we'll log that data as any traditional cloud service does. But we actually don't see any information about when you execute the query and what results get returned, right? We also, Copilot can do a lot of things, but it can't mind read, right? So it doesn't know exactly what you're looking for. It doesn't know what intent you have when you're creating your query. So we really rely on our users and their generosity of sharing information to help make Copilot better. But first and foremost, we respect the privacy and security of the data for our customers, so we don't collect any of that information automatically.
Got it. Okay, so you gotta share with us if you want to make it better, and for the common good, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's double click a little bit into this testing phase, right? So I mentioned testing, and testing means lots of different things, and I encourage folks out there who are interested in testing the output or evaluating systems that are based on generative AI models to go check out some of the generative AI resources and learn.microsoft.com, because there's really a wealth of information out there. What I'll do here is just summarize at a high level some of the testing points that we utilize for Copilot today. The first is around what we call validity, right? So when Copilot generates a query, but also an explanation, doesn't make sense, right? Can that query actually execute? Does the explanation that the Copilot generates actually make grammatical sense? And does it actually align with the query that gets created, right? These are things where you can develop some automated testing for, but it always pays to have some humans behind the scenes also doing some evaluation. And again, I'll just mention a point which you mentioned a minute ago is when we do this testing, that we don't do it on customer data. We actually have our own data sets that are either synthetically generated or from publicly available data sets that we run all of our testing on. So yeah, the first step is to look at validity, like is the output from the model make sense? And the second is verification of intent, right? So maybe Copilot generates a query that executes, but we want to make sure that it actually matches what the user wanted, right? And this is a little bit more subjective because different people have different ways of expressing themselves and writing prompts. And so some people may be extremely prescriptive and detailed in how they write a prompt, and some people may be a little bit less descriptive. And so we want to make sure that Copilot has a nice balance where it's able to do a pretty good job at inferring what you're trying to get at in your data. The third point is the accuracy of the results, right? So does Copilot create a query that gives you the results that you're looking for? And we want to make sure that nothing is amiss, that the query is constructed in a way that captures all of the data that's relevant to your query, or to your prompt rather. And then we look at optimality, right? So if you're familiar with Cosmos DB or really any database product, you know that there are some system functions and some ways of writing your query that for your use case may have better performance and lower latency. In the case of Cosmos DB, maybe there's ways of writing the query so you better leverage your indexing policy, et cetera, right? So the fourth stage of what we look at is Copilot using the right system functions for the information it's trying to get? And is it making appropriate use of the index policy? And then the fifth and extremely important part of testing is around responsible AI, right? Making sure that we're treating our customers' data securely, privately, but also making sure that our generative AI model is fair and unbiased and overall, doing the right thing.
Yeah, I love your font there.
Yeah, it only makes sense that responsible AI should, or AI developed responsibly should do right by everyone, right?
Yeah, no, I was asking you that earlier. I'm like, wow, that's a cool font in PowerPoint, and you're like, no, I had to make that manually, and I'm like, there's an opportunity, Office folks, make a rainbow font. That would be so cool. I would love it. So
yeah, maybe we'll give a little feedback back to the PowerPoint team after the end of this.
Yeah, right. They got a feedback engine for their stuff too. How do you like using? I just got a little pop up today. Like, tell us how you like PowerPoint. And I just said no, but next time I will.
I'm sure they rely on that feedback just like we do for Copilot.
I know they do, actually. I know they do. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm going to double click into responsible AI a little bit more. So just real quickly, I mentioned, responsible AI encapsulates many different criteria, right? Everything from fairness, making sure that your product, your system, your AI model is fair, representative um, of truth, of being conscious of biases, social biases, biases that may be present in your data set. Reliability and safety is also another large one, right? Making sure that you're developing AI systems that are reliable, that have safety measures in place to protect privacy and security, which comes next, right? We want to make sure that we're handling sensitive data and all data in a very secure manner and aligned with the expectations for guidances that we have from policy, but also expectations that we have from our customers. Inclusiveness, right? Microsoft, prides itself in developing tools and applications and software that really empower everyone in the world. And so this is a big part of what we want to do, is make sure that everyone can use and enjoy all the products we make, including the AI products. Transparency focuses on making sure that when you develop an AI application model, that you have some focus on explainability, on the processes that are going on underneath the hood, about data processing and how the model is leveraging the data, which is why I said for Copilot, we offer explanations for every query that gets generated, so to help with interpretability of the queries that get created. And we have a huge focus on maintaining your Cosmos DB data remains separate and private from, say, OpenAI or from other resources as well. And then finally, accountability, right? Like, we all have to work together, remain accountable for the products that we put out and the AI models that we developed. And by working together, we can keep each other accountable and make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah.
A big part of responsible AI testing for generative AI, and particularly in applications that use large language models, is there's a process that's called red teaming. This is something that all products and features that leverage large language models inside Microsoft have to go through, actually, before we can deploy them to our customers. We have to go through a process called red team testing, which is making sure that we do our due diligence to evaluate potential harms, biases, and other responsible AI criteria. Make sure that we are doing a good job at detecting these, testing, mitigating when they happen, and reporting on our findings, right? So there's a lot of information here that you can find on the Responsible AI team's website and on learn.microsoft.com. But some important things that we had to sort of think through as we were doing our testing is, who's going to be doing the testing, right? So for Copilot, we used a combination of automated testing and manual human testing. So we wanted to make sure that we had a good group of people, sizable, to make sure that we had good coverage, but also a diverse range of people. And I mean diversity in every single possible way, right? Not just gender and age and ethnicity, but also, in our own product team, we recognize that we're biased because we work on Cosmos DB, or we're biased because we work on SQL query, right? So we want to make sure that we have diversity of thought and diversity of experience of when we go into the testing, because we want everyone with different perspectives to come and essentially try to break Copilot, right? We're trying to find the holes so we can patch them, trying to find where Copilot shines and where it maybe needs some help. So big thing to think about is who will do the testing and how many people you have. Next, you have to settle on what you need to test. So the responsible AI team at Microsoft has an entire category range of various categories where you can do responsible AI testing. Everything from jailbreaking, so getting the large language model to do something that is unintended, to creating malicious code, to exhibiting bias in some way, to creating hate speech or harmful content. So lots of different avenues for you to do testing. So you need to determine what exactly you need to test, how to test. Are you going to have manual users? Are you going to have humans in the loop doing the testing? Are you going to rely on automation purely? Or are you going to have some hybrid approach like what we took for Copilot? And then determine, how are you going to record your data? What are the metrics that you're going to evaluate your system on? And what is the threshold that you're looking to hit before you release? And then you conduct your red team testing. And this is not sort of a one-time thing, right? This is an iterative process where you do a round of testing, you identify areas of improvement, you make those improvements to your LLM pipeline, and then you do testing again. And this is something that we did extensively when we were in private preview. We did it extensively leading up to public preview, and we'll continue doing this regularly in our journey in public preview as we march towards general availability. And then finally, reporting regularly with your key stakeholders, identifying the top issues, providing links to your raw data for transparency and accountability, talking about the testing plan for upcoming rounds, making sure that you acknowledge and offer support to the red team testers that could be exposed to odd things that are generated by your large language models, and then providing all the relevant information. The key here is being open, honest, transparent, and being accountable, so we can have a really accurate measure of what we're building and making sure that we're building the right thing the right way.
Man, it's quite expansive. Like, I've not seen anything like this since like around 2000, almost 20 years ago. We released this thing called Secure Development Lifecycle, and that was kind of after a whole slew of incidents kind of related to secure products or missing security products, as it were, that had us come and develop this whole SDL process that include things like secure by design, secure by default, but also included these processes around doing penetration testing and fuzzing and black box, and all of these processes that were developed and kind of, not developed strictly through SDL. A lot of these things existed, but to help codify these things and pull them together into this SDL process that we defined. And every single product had to go through this and continues, to go through this. Like, it took years to kind of get this fully baked into how we build products. What I love seeing, well, first of all, this reminds me of kind of that whole thing. I mean, it was back like nearly 20 years ago when we came out with this, like 2007. But we're doing it at the onset of this, like before we get to this point of where you have to have it, or after bad things happen. We are proactively putting these types of processes in place. And it's fascinating, and I think it's awesome that we are doing it. And I think it's clear and obvious why this is so important to have these types of processes and this structure and rigor in place for these types of things. So it's great listening to hear you talk about it and how we implement it and how we're doing it. But it's not just us. It's everybody has to go through the same exact process. Every Copilot you see, or use of generative AI you see at Microsoft, it's in a product or service of ours, goes through this exact same thing. And I wasn't as close as you were to this, but I'm close enough to see that it is extremely rigorous, I guess is the word I would use. I'll be euphemistic in that. But that, I think it's necessary and important. So with this is just what you have to do, I think, to do it right.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It is quite a rigorous process. I will say that, initially there's a lot of depth to this. And so for somebody who's new to the responsible AI space like myself, right, I'm not new to AI. I've been working in AI for, AI machine learning for more than a decade. But for responsible AI, it's something that I've thought of, but not really delve too deeply into. So there's a wealth of information out there. The responsible AI team does a really great job at providing guidance and overview for what's important to think about. And also, the great news is like they're constantly developing tools that you can use to help automate these processes. So I'd really encourage, listeners or viewers who are really interested in developing generative AI applications or AI applications in general to go check out some of the resources from the Microsoft Responsible AI team. It's a rapidly changing field, and those guys are always working really hard to bring the best content out and also make it easier for us to do this responsibly.
Yeah, and by the way, for those of you watching, if you're developing applications like this, you really should embrace the learning and what's being developed around this responsible AI that we're producing. There's a lot of content now and guidance that we're produced on this as a company, and a ton more coming on it as well. But it behooves everyone that's working in this space to do these types of things to ensure they're treating their own customers' data in a responsible way and doing this in a proper fashion. So it's not just us. I think it's everyone. We're all in this together to go and build these and apply to these principles. So good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Yeah, so
anything
if
else?
you're interested,
Some learn more.
yeah, it's just some learn more. So we have a great blog post that we put up on the dev blogs, and then we have a quick link here to some of the documentation if you want to get started. I realized I neglected to mention, I did mention previously that Copilot right now for Cosmos DB is in preview. If you want to go and enable that, you can go enable it in your Azure subscription under the preview features tab. Cosmos DB Copilot is free to use right now, so you can go try it in the portal and not worry about the costs you might incur. It's absolutely free.
That's awesome. Just go and use it, folks. It's right there. Everybody gets to use it. Totally free to use. And I think it's awesome. I've been on this team for over 6 years, and I still struggle writing queries. So everybody can use that thing to help them. In fact, I use ChatGPT to write queries for everything. And that's, what you've got is a purpose-built ChatGPT that is trained on our language, on our syntax functionally, wouldn't you say? I mean, that's kind of what we've done and created for customers there, and done it in product right there in the portal. So you're right next to where you need it in there. So this is great stuff, James. Loved having you on the show. Congratulations, your very first Cosmos DB TV show. I know you're going to come back. Because I know it's on your roadmap for stuff that you're working on for the rest of the semester and beyond. So looking forward to having you back and just showing everybody the great stuff that's coming.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. We have a lot of great stuff coming in the next couple of months, so I'll definitely be back.
All right, cool. Hey, folks, thanks for joining us. It was great having James here, and great seeing you all. We'll be back here in another week or two. I got to take some time off. James and I are going to go hop on an airplane. But we'll be back, and we'll have more shows for you. So come back and join us again soon sometime. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next time.